Welcome to episode 11 of Education, a Clusterfuck in Need of Repair. This episode, Autonomy, Mastery, and Purpose, the Hidden Gems of School Leadership, is the third in a 3-episode sequence on school-based leadership, principals, assistant principals, department heads, etc., with a focus on principals. Before we start, I'd like to emphasize that all ideas presented in this podcast are my own and do not reflect the thoughts, opinions, or positions of my employer, Emerson College, its programs, or its representatives. Leaders are people, complex, multifaceted, brilliant, flawed people. The 3 things that motivate people more than money are autonomy, mastery, and purpose. In the meandering introduction to leadership as a topic, in episode 9, I promised an episode with more references and research. This is it. But as is my wont, it also includes references to experiences in schools, mine and other people's, because theory separate from practice is not so useful to people who don't have a lot of time to ponder it and draw the connections to their lived experiences. You know, like full-time teachers and administrators. A detour already. I'm a closet intellectual. Sad but true. When I went to Harvard, by accident, I swear it was another example of me stumbling through my life. Okay, an abbreviated explanation. So, a friend of mine wanted to go to the master's program at Harvard, and we were going to go out to lunch afterwards, so I went with her to the office. And while she was in there talking to them, I was waiting, and I have some ADHD, so I was kind of flipping through the colorful pamphlets they had out in their waiting area, because it was a long time ago. And this young woman came out, and she was very well dressed. She was wearing a little tiny pencil skirt. She had bright red lipstick, and she said to me, "Oh, are you considering coming to Harvard?" And I didn't want to be rude. I'm manhandling her pamphlet. So I said, "Oh, well, yes, yeah, eventually." She said, "Well, what program are you interested in?" I said, "A Master's of Education." She goes, "Well, you could apply." I said, "Well, it's past the deadline." She said, "Oh, we're still accepting applications." I said, "Well, I haven't even taken the GRE, haven't taken any exam." She goes, "Oh, that's okay. We accept the Miller Analogy Test. That's offered weekly. You can take it within a week and we can get your results a week after that." I said, well, I would need to be a part-time student. I have a child. That's all right. We're still accepting part-time applications. I was like, Jesus. I said, "I would need financial aid." She said, "Oh, we still have financial aid available." You don't have to hit me with a rock. So I took the Miller Analogy. A week later, I sent them the results. I was accepted. And fast forward a few months, and I'm sitting in this giant theater, welcome meeting at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. This big mucky muck from Sesame Street is up there, and he goes, "Now I know you're sitting there wondering, feeling like, what am I doing here? I must have been accepted by mistake." And all the other people around me are looking at each other going, "That is how I feel. That's exactly what I thought when I got the letter." And I'm thinking, that's not how I feel. You guys practically begged me to come here. But I digress. So, when I went to Harvard, I had just completed a research project that yielded surprising results that no one could explain to me. So I spent 3 years in a 1-year program crafting an original theory to explain those results. I wrote and rewrote a paper, weaving in research on achievement motivation, human development in school context, infant development, multicultural education, and on and on. It was a 60-page opus. I got a lot of positive feedback on it, recommendations to continue to a doctoral program, to simplify the theory for publication, and on and on. Instead, I got divorced, remarried, had a child, and got pregnant again. It was a busy 3 years. When I returned to my magnum opus, I was distressed, even embarrassed, because only an intellectual could understand it. It was choked with polysyllabic language, references within references within references, and a level of complexity that Harvard fucking loved, but which made it completely useless for the people who might benefit from the actual information it contained: teachers, students, and parents. There's a schism between theorists, researchers, and practitioners, and there shouldn't be. So from then on, I wrote as much in the vernacular as I could and still get published. Because what the fuck? Who are ideas about education for? What's the point of expanding our understandings if we hoard them like an elitist treasure hidden from all but the academics? But I promised you some references and research, and I'm a woman of my word. Though I'm a little tempted to reference yet another refrigerator magnet I have. It says, "I never said all that shit," signed Confucius. But I did say all that shit, so here we go. I'm founding this episode on two primary areas of thought: types of school leadership, as discussed in What Are Leadership Theories in Education, from the Educational Leadership Degree, and Know Your Leadership Type Style from the Principal's Playbook, and a consideration of 3 things that motivate people more than money, from an article by Anita Bowness from Cornerstone On Demand. The references to these resources are linked in the blurb for this episode. I'll start with Anita Bowness. The 3 things that motivate people more than money are: 1, autonomy. In schools, we often refer to this as agency. The idea that people often prefer to have control over how they accomplish the tasks they're expected to complete. This can include the when, how, and an understanding of the why are we work. Like, why are we doing this? Or on a bad day, why the hell are we doing this? The motivational push of autonomy applies to teachers, students, and administrators. Number 2 is mastery. It is motivating to develop skills, or even greatness in some area of effort. It creates a cycle of motivation that's self-generating. The better you get, the better it feels, the more you want to do it. Again, this applies to teachers, students, and administrators. Number 3 is purpose. People need to feel that what they do has meaning, and sometimes that it serves some larger goal for themselves or their community. And who does this apply to? That's right, no one you know. No, I'm just kidding. It applies to students, it applies to teachers, and it applies to administrators. A detour. On a loop back to episode number 2 on controlling the narrative, media, and in a larger sense, society itself, tries to maintain the fiction that money is the primary motivator for people when they work, even though research is very clear on the fact that it falls not just behind, but far behind autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Why do we fall for that bullshit? When people snarkily reference our long summers off as teachers or our copious vacations as the reason we teach, we know that's bullshit, but it can burrow into your head and set up a cozy hideaway there. Try to confront it if you can stand to. Actually, the fantastic vacation perks are not my chief motivator. Like everyone else in the world, I'm motivated by autonomy, mastery, and purpose. What motivates you at your job? Or something kinder. I'm part pit bull, but with better teeth. Anyway, using autonomy, mastery, and purpose as part of the frame here, I want to look at the 8 styles of educational leadership which my magical research assistant, Emily, assembled for me. Did you really think I did all this by myself? Please. I have capital H help. Tech help, social media help, a sound editor, an art department, research, colleagues who offer their expertise, and so on. It's not easy to sound this casual and idiosyncratic, you know. Anyway, the first of the 8 styles of leadership is transactional leadership. Transactional leadership is a give and take style, or what I would call a carrot and stick style, where the leader negotiates directly with staff over job requirements and methods. It revolves around rewards and punishments for well-defined expectations, the behaviorist leadership style. Though confusion and guesswork are eliminated since tasks and expectations are clearly mapped out by the leader, it creates a rigid environment where creativity and innovation may be stifled. This dynamic fails the motivation test for most teachers. Though they may still feel a sense of purpose in the job they do, autonomy and mastery are very tenuous with this model. In episode 9, I described a principal who embodied this approach to a large degree, though the punishments for falling out of favor with him were largely conducted on the down low. Why do I have lunch duty every day? Why is every miscreant in the 9th grade in my class? And lest you think I'm making this up, a brief story. When computers began making their way into schools, yes, I'm that old, teachers were allowed to take one home for the summer to become computer literate so they could use this fabulous resource during the school year. They were Macs, gray and white screen floppy disks. Yes, that old. If you wanted one, you just submitted the request to the office and it was rubber stamped approved. But not for me. I was called down to the principal's office. "So this is you?" he asks, looking at my request form. Yes. He casts a quizzical glance at me. "You work in this school?" "Yes." "How long have you worked here?" I can feel the red creeping into my face. I will it away. 6 years. Wow. He starts tapping the edge of the paper against the desk. 6 years. Why didn't I know that? Why wouldn't I know that you've been here for so long? Now I'm struggling to hold my temper. Thank God for my early training with my mother. "I don't know." "Couldn't you borrow it from some other school?" "No, because I work here." "Oh." After another 10 minutes or so, he agrees to let me borrow the fucking computer. As I leave his office, he calls after me. "Are you sure you work here?" Oh my God, I just realized the origin of my hatred of computers and my intense support for unions. Having a principal who hates you leaves you incredibly vulnerable. You need support. Though how I would have reported this to my union rep, I don't know. Onward. The second leadership style is transformational or change leadership. These are leaders who offer a big vision and compel school communities to make big changes. They inspire and empower other people to own their work and chime in with their suggestions or observations about how things could be streamlined or upgraded. If the leader can establish trust with the teachers and can rally them around the new vision or goal, this style ticks the mastery and purpose boxes, though not necessarily the autonomy box. If the teachers have processes in place that already work, there can be pushback on changes envisioned by the leader. I've known several strong transformational leaders, particularly in the Boston public schools. There was a long period in the 90s when new writing programs came in with virtually every new principal. For schools who were struggling to get their students through the Stanford 9, the standardized test in the Boston public schools at that time, improving student literacy was a core concern. Unfortunately, when the new principal moved on, often within 3 years, so did the new writing program, to be replaced by the next principal with their favored program. Rinse and repeat. Eventually, this revolving door undermined the teacher's sense of mastery and purpose and engendered bitterness, resistance, and a sense of hopelessness. I've found that when teachers or students are denied a sense of agency or autonomy, in a place that they spend so much time and expend so much effort, resistance becomes the agency they have available to them for the purpose of maintaining their sense of value, and they can become real masters at it. In one school I worked in, before the first period of the day, the masters of resistance would be lined up in the hall, faces to the wall, waiting to be sent home. Before the first period of the day. I refer, of course, to students, not teachers. The third leadership style is called servant leadership. I think a less pejorative term than servant might be welcome here. How about facilitator? Facilitator leadership. A servant leader recognizes expertise within their team and pushes those individuals to the front, taking care of resource and bureaucratic obstacles that impede them. This style ticks all three boxes: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. According to the article, it boosts morale and leads to a high level of trust, which results in better teacher and student performance and a more positive school culture overall. And according to the article, this style of leadership doesn't come naturally to most. I'm not sure that's true. Not to be full of myself, but that is my leadership style as a teacher and a principal. And I'm not the only one. I've known a number of servant leaders. Nope, I can't live with that title. I've known a number of facilitator leaders, better, in a variety of schools, rural, suburban, and urban. I think the reason we don't see more of that has more to do with how we as a society conceive and talk about power than it does with people's natural tendencies. There is strict expectation of how a boss behaves, and that message is reinforced in TV, movies, and social media. An interesting factoid about me, I actually don't believe in the concept of boss. This is true even when I am the boss. Co-worker is as far as I go. The funny thing is that when someone who believes themselves to be my boss talks with me, they realize something is wrong. I'm not responding correctly. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not an asshole or rude or something. Truly, I have fabulous manners. Really. I just speak as though we're equals because I believe we are equals. And when you talk as equals with someone who thinks they're your capital B boss, they eventually realize it. And either they feel like an asshole themselves, which is funny, or they just go with it, which is a better choice. Because guess what? We are equals. And part of realizing that we're all equals does three things for me as a principal. One, it frees me from having to be the only one in the room who knows stuff. Everyone knows things and everyone doesn't know things. It's much easier to get things done in a school with 20 heads on the problem. Two, I get to learn things from my colleagues, students, and parents, which is great because I love to learn and I can't afford to stay in college my whole life. And three, we model equity and community for our students, and they need that. So maybe equity leadership as a descriptor? Maybe. Fourth is democratic leadership. According to the article, democratic leadership values consensus and building agreement, encouraging creativity and innovation. It ticks two of the boxes, autonomy and purpose. And depending on how the vote goes, mastery. For example, if the vote is to shift to computer-based online learning, my mastery goes right out the door. To be honest, I'm not even going to try. Yeah, poor sport. I consider this to be a subset of equity leadership. See how that's caught on? It can be slower, but what you lose in speed, you gain in buy-in. Just do it. Never a good way to approach teachers or students or humans, really. Fifth is autocratic leadership, where decisions come top-down and outside input may be considered. That's a quote. Maybe. Yeah. The article suggests that the positives of this style are that decisions are often made quickly and strategically, and teams are kept on track as a result. The con is that employees can feel ignored restricted, and in the absolute worst of cases, even abused. You think? This style doesn't even believe that motivation is a factor. Never mind autonomy, mastery, and purpose. What? Sorry, I consider this my way or the highway style not worth discussing, so I'm not going to. 6th, bureaucratic leadership. This one made me laugh. They believe in systems and may not engage closely or personally with their team. The article suggests that this style might work best in environments where administration has infrequent face-to-face contact with teachers. Ew. The upside? As a systematized approach to leadership, things remain constant even through personnel changes and other shifts that threaten to rock the boat. The downside? This approach can be inflexible and neglect to leave room for creativity or ideas from employees. Wow. Big downside. And autonomy and mastery are reserved for the faceless administrator, the soulless computer systems, and the programmed outcomes of the bureaucracy. As for purpose, it depends on whether you can adopt the purpose of a system in which you have no say and over which you have no control. Fortunately, I've never known a school system so flush with dough and so lacking in humans with a point of view that bureaucratic leadership can emerge to its fullest potential. However, one could point to the increasing emphasis on data, the increase and refinement in the level of reporting on data points that's required of teachers and schools, and financial decisions made on the basis of those reports to be bureaucratic leadership fighting for supremacy. Run away. 7th is adaptive leadership. This is like servant leadership without the support. Adaptive leaders also trust their team and get out of the way to allow them to do what they do best. This level of trust and independence is empowering for teams that are creative and self-motivated. It ticks autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So the downside? According to the article, chaos and confusion can quickly ensue, especially if the team isn't organized or self-directed. I would argue that the disorganized group lacking in self-direction is a condemnation of schooling that prepares people to follow, not to lead. But I digress. In my experience, the adaptive leader, again, weird choice of term, tends not to generate chaos, but to stimulate leadership skills in a sort of second generation of school leaders who assume some of the tasks of leadership and keep things moving. Though not always intentional, teachers who need more structure will often take over the tasks that allow the school to function well. For example, at Sparhawk, I was not wildly organized. But I had an administrative assistant who loved to organize and was a monster of efficiency. Eventually, through observation and probably osmosis, I adopted some of her strategies. But it was the teachers and the staff who provided the structure they needed. I never had to corral chaos because others stepped in before chaos could gain a toehold. And it is a workable model if you're adaptable and you pay your people well. Finally, 8th is charismatic leadership. According to the article, these leaders share an inspiring big picture vision that is exciting even when it comes with big challenges. They have a knack for drawing admiration and respect. Motivation is easy. Sadly, they can have such an intense focus that they develop tunnel vision and lose sight of other important issues. I don't quite know how to respond to this one because a charismatic leader can be a saint who does good things. I think of Mary Skipper, currently the superintendent of the Boston Public Schools, who formerly founded a pilot school called Tech Boston Academy in Dorchester that demonstrated the best of the small schools movement. She inspired her staff to an astounding level of commitment and brought out the best in each of them. She made them believe in themselves and in their potential to do great things. As one of her staff told me, If Mary Skipper told me I could fly off the roof of the school, I'd believe her. Or Ted Sizer, whose commitment to the Coalition of Essential Schools helped him create a small empire, a network of schools committed to depth in learning, the agency of learning and teachers, and the development of a thoughtful questioning of the world we inhabit. At its height, the Coalition of Essential Schools had job boards, a yearly conference, and a website of resources and ideas. However, a charismatic leader can also be a giant asshat who does bad things. Look at politics today. There are too many examples to mention. Charismatic leaders can foster an environment ripe with autonomy, mastery, and purpose, or they can erase all trace of those elements. They can be a huge ego concerned only for themselves, or a selfless person concerned only with others. And they can overlap with a bunch of the earlier types I discussed. In conversation with a colleague, she told me about the principal at her new school, who's been great, warm, positive, and welcoming. The leader asked the teacher, "How are you feeling? What do you need? What can I do for you?" and facilitated her grant writing to build a new theater in the school. The teacher notes that she is all about transparency and communication, releasing a report each morning on everything that happened the previous day, good and bad, that allows teachers to make informed decisions about student groupings in their classes, among other things. She says, quote, "She just gets it in a way that I've never experienced before. And I think as an educator, it makes me less afraid. It makes me feel like I can lead with my honest, true opinions and build something with my team that is really genuine and meaningful. And we can go to her and say, like, what do you think about this? Or this isn't working for us. Can we add this? Can we change this?" And there's no fear. So which style is that principle? You tell me. Leaders are people. Complex, multifaceted, brilliant, flawed people. They can be the autocrat or the democratic leader, depending on who they answer to. They can be equity leaders. That term again, it just won't go away. Or adaptive leaders. And part of their leadership style depends on who they're leading. Just like teachers in a classroom, leaders can be inspired to become their best selves or their not so best selves in response to the teachers and kids in their school. We defy categories because we are a bundle of potentials, defined in part by our environments. Which brings me back to my treatise on leadership and community. We are in relationship with those we lead. That's not a bad thing, as long as we maintain boundaries that keep everyone safe, but it is a complicating thing. And the style of that leadership is secondary to the beliefs and concerns that person holds. Belief in the potential of all teachers, staff, and students. Belief in the importance of the job, the exciting, big, life-changing adventure that is teaching and learning. Belief that they can lead and that they want to lead. Finally, in my opinion, the strongest leaders are those who can inspire. Inspire creativity, inspire risk-taking, and inspire loyalty, not to themselves as individuals, but to education itself. What would that style be called? The next episode of this podcast will drop on March 14th. In the meantime, if you have a story, good or bad, about school leaders you've experienced, please DM me in my Instagram account, education, CLUSTERF_CK, or email it to me at education, CLUSTERFCK@gmail.com, and I'll share them at the next episode. I'll leave out your name if you prefer. As always, thank you for listening. If you have time, please post a review or share this with someone you think it would be useful for. I'll talk at you in about 2 weeks.
J like the letter, I'm making several waves. I know the mission the same. I made a splash, now all of my passes last like running a race with Usain. I keep it coming like this a buffet. And if I'm stumbling, I'm in the grave. Never gon' fumble it, I get the bag and I run with it, gunning it, gunning it, gunning it, gunning it.